Guys, today a full Sethos guide where I talk about his kit, potential teams, build, and blah blah blah. So, Sethos is a 4-star that is coming out in the upcoming patch 4.7 and is an on-field carry just like Gaming. Since Gaming is a very good carry, the anticipation for this new 4-star Sethos has been quite high. He's an electro bow character and I have to be honest here, he has one of the most unique kits I've ever seen in Genshin. That's because essentially he has two ways of attacking and they kinda clash with each other. The first is a charge attack spam style, just like Ganyu, Tighnari, and other charge attack damage dealers, he has a level 2 charge attack. This attack normally has a very long charge time, but he can shorten it by consuming energy. In fact, during his charge time he will consume energy, and the load up for the level 2 charge attack will become faster the more energy he uses, up to 20 for a single one. By consuming 20 energy, he can make it as fast as 0.3 seconds, which is kinda like Tighnari, basically an instant charge attack. This isn't needed for Sethos because while he's loading a charge attack, he can't move around, so he's going to be very vulnerable to enemy attacks. Additionally, he has no baits to confuse the opponent's weight like Line's bombs or Tighnari's elemental skill, so he definitely needs to throw that shit as fast as possible. As a baseline, the level 2 charge attack has a dual scaling of attack and elemental mastery, but thanks to his passive up to 4 times every 15 seconds, his charge attacks will get a massive additional elemental mastery scaling of 700%. Even though this can apply for 4 charge attacks in total, his maximum energy pool is of 60, so he can only make use of his super fast charge attacks up to 3 times consistently. His Constellation 6 fixes this by making one of his charge attacks consume no energy to get that fast. Anyway, you might be wondering just how the hell can this character sustain such huge levels of energy consumptions? There are 2 answers here. First of all, his elemental skill is a 12 seconds cooldown, and other than doing damage, it generates 2 particles and 12 flat energy. Secondarily, he has access to one of the best batteries in the game in Fischl. Other than generating a lot of particles by yourself, the presence of Fischl on the team will also enable the electro resonance that will give you even more particles. So basically, you won't have particular energy issues. And all of this is the first part of his kit. The second part is the elemental burst. The burst will give electro infusion and elemental mastery scaling to his normal attacks for 8 seconds. So, a complete change of direction here. During his burst, his normal attacks will be considered charge attack damage, but they won't benefit from the elemental mastery buffing passive I mentioned before. So, with his burst, he just kinda becomes like Yoimiya, a normal attack spammer. And as a whole, this makes his kit a weird fusion between a Tighnari style and a Yoimiya style, and the two things don't go in sync very well. The first reason is that his burst does nothing for the charge attacks, and at the same time, the stuff that buffs the charge attacks does nothing for the normal attacks. This gets worse with his constellations, where just 2 of them are impacting the totality of his kit. Moreover, the 2 styles kind of compete with each other because in both cases you're using energy. So it's a big problem to even understand how this character should be played. Let me remind you that if you enjoy my content but you haven't subbed yet, please consider doing so because it really makes me notice your support. Now, in order to understand how it's best to play Sethos, it's important to analyze both his personal damage and his potential teams. In terms of the pure damage Sethos is dealing, his elemental burst normal attacks are better than the charge attack spam at every constellation level. This is pretty impressive, considering that excluding the talent level increase you get at Constellation 5, the elemental burst gets no specific boost from constellations. However, the huge difference here is that doing 4 charge attacks for Sethos is way faster than doing the full combo of normal attacks during his burst. Since charge attack spam is way more efficient in terms of damage per second, it can be better, but it all depends on how it fits on the team. And to be honest, the charge attacks might be too fast for their own good. To make a comparison with Tighnari, Sethos' windows are shorter than his, but in a way is more restricted than Tighnari is. That's because while Tighnari's windows have a 12 seconds cooldown, so the elemental skill cooldown, Sethos' windows have a 15 seconds cooldown, which is the passive cooldown. This means that while Tighnari is able to fit into quick rotations thanks to his short cooldowns, Sethos won't quite be able to do the same. The funny thing here is that the elemental burst is a 15 15 seconds cooldown as well, despite requiring longer field time from Sethos. So basically, while the charge attack is way faster than the elemental burst in terms of execution, it doesn't necessarily have benefits in terms of teams because their cooldowns are the same. Just to contextualize, I'm only going to talk about Dendro teams because Sethos has huge elemental mastery scaling, so it fits on those teams very well, obviously. So currently I only see two ways of playing Sethos, one where you use only his burst in a rotation, and one where you use both his burst and charge attacks. The burst only scenario is for short rotations, I'm talking 15 seconds long. Dendro teams in particular fit this scenario very well because we have characters like Fischl, Nahida, Kazuha, Sucrose that all have low cooldowns on their main abilities. Normal attack spam is also the playstyle that makes Sethos synergize with Fischl the best because it makes him able to drive her Constellation 6. Typically, this is where Fischl will perform the best with Sethos, and considering Fischl's damage is very high on this team comparable to Sethos, actually this is pretty important. But the most important thing here is that since the burst doesn't improve from Constellations as much as the charge attacks do for Sethos, this is probably the most free-to-play friendly way to play him. Meanwhile, for the charge attack spam and burst scenario, it's a long rotation thing. Basically, since I don't believe that the charge attacks alone are enough to properly fill a rotation, I think the way to go is adding the burst to it as well, but in order to do that you need to stretch the rotation a lot. That's because if you want to merge the two playstyles this way, you'll need Sethos to recover 120 energy every rotation, which is not trivial. On paper, with Fischl on the team, this isn't actually that unrealistic, but the thing is, since he needs to recover 60 energy between the charge attack window and the burst window, he needs some space in the middle of the rotation to actually have time to do that. In order for this to work properly from a team perspective, Sethos needs to have a teammate that can fill that downtime well, and the one I thought of for this role is Tignari. As I mentioned before, Tignari has pretty short windows, so playing him together with Sethos in a dual carry quick swap composition doesn't actually sound that bad. But to be honest, I don't really like this team because there is no real support, so no one ends up doing enough damage to justify the rotation being that long. In short, the way his kit is designed, his charge attack are very messy to handle in a rotation, so I like the idea of playing him as a normal attack spammer in tight rotations much more. Alternatively, theoretically speaking, there could be some high problem teams, but since Sethos is a bow damage dealer with single target attacks, he won't be able to hit the seeds consistently to trigger the hyperblooms. In terms of builds, statistically, mostly wants elemental mastery, damage bonus and crit. Attack isn't totally useless, but still much worse than elemental mastery. For the energies, Energy Sands is Fischl, meaning just play him with Fischl and for the most part you won't have issues with energy. In terms of artifact sets, it helps that basically all of his damage is counted as charge attack damage, so artifacts like the Wanderer's Troop end up buffing the entirety of his kit. The most interesting option here is the Chronicles set, that is commonly seen as an anemo buffing set. That's because the 4-piece effect damage bonus isn't tied to anemo damage specifically, and it also gives attack speed bonus if you use a charge attack. I'm assuming Sethos Elemental Burst normal attacks count for the activation of this effect. For the rest, he has several different options that are pretty close, like for example Gilded Dreams, or even combination of Elemental Mastery and damage bonus. Meanwhile, for the weapons, Sethos has an incredibly good free-to-play option, and that's Slingshot. As a 3-star weapon, Slingshot has very low base attack, but this doesn't really matter for Sethos, whose majority of damage is coming from elemental mastery scaling. On the flip side, the high crit rate value and the massive damage bonuses the weapon has matter a lot, and they make Slingshot relevant enough that it beats most of the 5-star options for Sethos. Now, truth be told, the weapon rankings can vary a bit depending on whether you use the charge attacks in a rotation or not, because the charge attacks have pretty nice attack scaling, so in the scenario where you use them, weapons with high base attack like Harp do a lot better comparatively. But since the burst only scenario is the best to me, I give Slingshot a lot of credit here because it's almost the best in slot, second only to the Hunter's Path. So overall, while I believe that Sethos has some design flaws, I think the stuff he does well looks pretty good. It might not be ceiling raiser like Gaming was, but it's still pretty nice, especially if you consider that it's a 4-star that doesn't necessarily need constellations to do well, so that's pretty great. And I'm done for today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and also go check the Wanderer guide I made a week ago. Bye bye.